In case you're with us for the first time tonight, the Walking Book Club is a free, virtual, global community that moves while listening audiobooks to engage the mind and the body. Heart and Soul book chats pair authors with humanitarian causes. If you can, we ask that you support these events by donating directly to our cause or by supporting us through subscribing or a single issue purchase of the Walking Book Club e-magazine. The Walking Book Club e-magazine includes, in this issue, 35 pages of audiobook extras to enhance your listening experience. And the proceeds are donated directly to a charity that supports women, children, or the environment. Tonight's beneficiary is Room to Read, an organization working towards global equality in education. So this is what makes me like to say the Walking Book Club is good for mind, body, heart, and soul. Without further ado, let's welcome tonight's guests. I am thrilled to have one of the Walking Book Club's favorite authors, New York Times bestselling author, Sally Hepworth. Sally has sold over 1 million books, and her most recent book, The Soulmate, is a New York Times bestseller and was named Good Morning America Buzz Selection. In addition, many of her books have been optioned for screen adaptations. Welcome, Sally, and then we'll introduce our narrators. Welcome, Sally.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And for those of you who didn't hear, I'm in my ward in case you haven't seen that, because we've just moved house and I'm grabbing room wherever I can find it. So thank you for having me and all of my clothes back on the book club.
Well, you do have fabulous clothing.
Who am I kidding? These aren't all my clothes. These are just some of them.
You do have fabulous clothing.
Thank
In
you.
fact, what you were described as the crime writer dressed in pink today. So thank you for sharing your wardrobe with us. Okay, so now let's introduce
My
our
pleasure.
narrators. I'm super excited to have both narrators with us this evening. Jessica is a multi-award-winning filmmaker, writer, producer, director with more than 35 years experience in film and television industry. She is joining us tonight as the voice of Amanda. Welcome, Jessica. And Barrie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Thank you, Jessica. Barrie is joining us once again. Here's the surprise element, once again from her hometown of New York City. That's right, Barrie is a New Yorker. Also multi-talented, Barrie is an actor, singer, and writer and voice actor, and you can hear her voice acting talents in over 140 audiobooks. She will be reading the character of Pippa this evening. Welcome to you all. Let's get right into the chat. Sally, you just returned from your US tour. Seems like it was filled with some interesting twists of event. Can you share with us, our audience, your WrestleMania encounter, which has to do with our poll this evening as well? Go ahead.
Gladly. Every time I come to the States, I have one drama or another. Last year, I had my cash card was eaten, and so I was in the States by myself with no cash, and I had to actually ask readers on Instagram if I could get $5. So that was a really low point of my writing career. I thought I was past begging. But this time I decided that I wasn't going to be caught short. So before I left, I asked my husband to get me as much cash as he possibly could. So I was there, I was begging to get mugged, right, with all my American dollars, because I thought, what can go wrong when you have cash? You know, I was stupidly confident. So I got the first leg of the journey, Melbourne to LA, which is 16 hours. And then I had about a 3-hour layover, and then I was due to fly from on the red eye from LA to New York. And as I was getting ready to board the flight to New York, an announcement came out. And actually everyone got a text message, but I didn't get it for some reason, saying the flight had been delayed for 13 hours. And everyone was really, they were all complaining. And I thought, miserable Americans, this is fine. Just kidding. I love Americans. I've got all my cash. I'll just get a hotel. And so I went back to the desk and they said, the problem is there is no hotels available in LA in the airport region because WrestleMania is on. Can you believe it? Like, I thought this has to be a joke. And all of the hotels are booked out. And I said, so what do we do? Can we sleep in the lounge? And they said, no, the lounge is about to close. And so we had 13 hours to kill. And I did what I always do when things go wrong. And that is, I found someone who looked like they knew what they were doing. And this was a woman, her name was Lorraine. She was Australian, and she was on the phone. And she said, I think I found a hotel. And I said, oh, can I have a hotel? You know, have they got 2 rooms? And she said yes. And I gave my credit card. We booked another room. And then another man was also in the lounge, and he said, I'd like a room too. So after meeting these 2 people, the 3 of us jumped in an Uber and we were going around LA. First, we went to a wrong stop because I gave the wrong directions, my fault, not uncommon of me. Then we went to the correct hotel, found out we'd booked the wrong night and there were no rooms available because of WrestleMania. And then we were told that there was 1 hotel room available at their sister hotel and another single hotel room available at another hotel. And so I looked at Lorraine, who I'd just met, and I said, would you like to share? And Lorraine said, yeah, okay, why not? And at the time, you know, we were very tired. It seemed like a normal thing to do. So we went to the hotel. We said goodbye to Mark, our 3rd companion. We went to the hotel, which had 1 bed. We changed into our Qantas pajamas. It was like school camp. We took turns in the bathroom. And then as we hopped into bed together, like, I'm thinking this could not get stranger, right? Oh, and by the way, it was a 2-star strip hotel mall, you know, like the ones like where prostitutes go to die on TV, you know, that's on a highway opposite the Popo Loco. I'm like, I'm in Breaking Bad right now. This is amazing. So as I get into bed with Lorraine, who I've known for, you know, an hour and a half, there's a knock on the door. And I said, Lorraine, someone's at the door. And she said, who would be at the door? And I said, I don't know, but on Breaking Bad, it's never good when someone knocks at the door. So we crept to the door, we looked through the peephole, and it was Mark, the 3rd man, whose other hotel room hadn't worked out. He came in, slept on the floor. And that's how I came to spend a night with 2 strangers in a 2-star LA hotel with my bag of cash, which, as it happens, is not that useful. I could have used a change of underwear and, you know, some socks or something, some face wash. Instead, I had a bag of cash. So who knew? At least I've got the start to a new novel now.
I was going to say, I hope that's going to be in your next book.
You can't
The
make
layover.
the layover. You can't make that up. I did invite Lorraine on Instagram. I said, Lorraine, please join us. I don't know if she's here tonight, but I did invite her. I was like, Lorraine, I'd love to have you. Lorraine, if you're out there, chat yourself.
Please say.
Yeah, but I did invite her. I don't know that she was probably like, who is this weird person asking me to join a chat? But I was like, that must be the Lorraine.
Well, she's now read the Soulmate. She sent me a picture of her with the Soulmate, and we're, you know, friends for life now. So I hope she's here.
Well, she adores you. I adore you. We adore you. Your stories are perfect for the Walking Book Club. I mean this with all sincerity. The character builds quickly. There's intrigue and mystery hooks right away, and there are plenty of twists. And there's a dash, I would say, of family dysfunction, and it comes together for a 5-sneaker rating for Motivation to Move. So in our book club, we rate our audiobooks on Motivation to Move and a couple of other things, which we'll get to just in a minute or two. So your books, to me, are a 5-sneaker Motivation to Move. So
I
think
love that. Thank you.
Such a perfect formula. But I'm curious, how would you describe your formula for writing?
Oh, my formula. I mean, it's funny because the more books I write, the more people ask me how to write a book or how I write a book. And the more books I write, the less I kind of understand. You know, I feel like if you asked a first-time author how they do it, they would know. But now, that's my dog snoring. I haven't fallen asleep. now it's come to a point where so much of it is by gut feel. I start with family dysfunctionality. I add a little bit of murder. I mean, they're the things that I know. And from there, it's just a gut feel of, does something need to happen? I really go by gut when it comes to pacing, when it comes to twists. I know that if I'm getting bored, then the reader will get bored. And so I like things to happen, and unexpected things to happen. But I also like there to be some sort of emotional resonance, or, you know, an opportunity to see something from someone else's side. And if I can get those things happening, something that kind of keeps the pages ticking, but also gets you, you know, thinking a bit more deeply about something, then I guess maybe that's the formula. Yeah.
I like that. One of the things that I really think you do beautifully is you bring in, with Fern, it was being neuroatypical, and you brought it in with such compassion. And with Gabe, you bring in the diagnosis, and you do it with such compassion that you don't, you like you said, you have a flip side of the character. So we adore you. I adore your formula, and I can't wait to see what's next. So for those of you who are new to the Walking Book Club, we also rate our audiobooks. Besides Motivation to Move, we also rate them on quality of narration. And I want to say that your audiobooks are always 5 sneakers for quality narration, which is why it is so exciting to have both narrators read for us tonight. So with that being said, I'm excited to ask Jessica to read the character of Amanda for us tonight. Whenever you're ready, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to read a little chunk of chapter 7, which I chose because it reveals the sort of wellspring of the importance of the soulmate for Amanda. So chapter 7, Amanda, after. Death isn't so bad when you settle into it. In fact, there's something soothing about it. Watching everything but having no bearing on any of it. Hurts from life come with you, but they don't sting. Like a mosquito bite that has lost its itch. You know it happened, but you don't feel it anymore. I wish I'd known this when I buried my mother. It would have helped me a lot. All I wanted my whole life was for my mum not to hurt anymore. To have the happy ending she'd always dreamed of, but never got. My father wasn't a good man, you see. He was hot-tempered, stupid, occasionally violent. He was extremely good-looking and charming, apparently, but that was part of the problem. He swept Mum off her feet, wooing her with promises of happy ever after. Then, like a lot of charming, good-looking men, he never delivered on any of it. The story goes that my grandmother warned my mother about him. A blind man could see that man was a player, my grandmother said, but Mum didn't listen. He was her soulmate, she said. She moved away from her family and friends to a small regional town. She gave my father every cent she'd saved, as well as the car she'd worked so hard for. She became pregnant within a couple of months of their wedding, starting the family they'd talked so much about. She tried hard to make our modest house a lovely home for my father, a waste of time, seeing as he was rarely inside it.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for reading Amanda for us. Over the course of our evolution, we've gotten to appreciate the talents of voice actors. So I'm curious, what would you describe as your niche or your way of approaching a voice acting role?
I've got a sort of an interesting sort of history with working in the film industry as a documentary maker. I used to do a lot of narration as sort of for friends. That's how I started out, and then I got and I was always sort of good at accents and things. I always kind of loved reading at school, and then finally a friend persuaded me to do a demo, and that was how I got myself an agent. And it's always been work that I love, and what I really love particularly, documentary narration is interesting. Commercials pay extremely well, but I love doing the audiobooks because they offer you such scope for character work, and it gives you such a breadth of opportunity to explore different voices. And one of the things I love about Sally's books is that they are so, I mean, you know, they've got great plots, but they're also really, really strongly character driven. So when I prepare for a book, I'm really interested, actually, I'll be interested to hear about Barrie's process, but what I tend to do is I don't read the text. I kind of skim it. I don't do a really detailed read, because I love to be able to bring a level of spontaneity to the read. So I do a skim of in prep for each recording session, which in my case would normally go for a maximum of about 4 hours. And that enables me to sort of bring a spontaneity to the read.
That's interesting.
Wow.
That's interesting. I love getting to know
Yeah.
how different narrators approach the role. So that's a new piece of information of how somebody else approaches it. So thank you. Sally, speaking of Amanda's character, Amanda comes to us posthumously. I've listened to many of your books, and this was new for me. And how did the writing from this perspective come to you? Did you need a way of bringing this story in, or did you start with this perspective of posthumous voice?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I just had this memory of, after I'd finished writing this book, speaking to a friend who is a reader and I think quite likes my books. You know, she certainly said that she's always liked my books. And before I told her what it was about, she said, "You know why I like your books, Sally? Because they never have ghosts in them. I'm sick of people writing books with ghosts in them." And I thought, shit. But I don't think of Amanda as being a ghost. I don't know what she is, but I really didn't. I write these days a lot of words, and they don't all make it into the book. And I knew that I wanted to explore 2 marriages to be able to, you know, offer some different perspectives. And I was pretty sure it was going to be Pippa and it was going to be Amanda. I thought maybe I would tell her perspective through flashback. So yes, she was dead, but in the parts I shared, she would be alive. And that first section that I wrote in Amanda's perspective was a bit of an exercise. You know, can I do this? I've read books that do it so well, like The Lovely Bones. You know, you don't want to do it badly if you're going to have a go. And I was quite happy with the first go that I had. So I thought I'll leave it in and keep going. And I wrote the book with most of it in flashback. And it wasn't until I got to the end that I saw how that was going to come together, because I was like, what's the point? I'm not sure where she's in this kind of in-between state. What's she doing there? And it was one of those glorious things where by the end, it came together beautifully. Stephen King calls it the boys in the basement, when you are subconsciously kind of laying the footwork for something that you don't quite understand yet. I call it the women in the basement, because let's face it, it's the women who are usually doing the hard work. But in this case, you know, I mean, often the women don't actually, or the men show up, and you get to the end and you think, what was this doing here? But in this case, you know, the women were doing their jobs. So yeah, I was, and you know, a new challenge is a great thing as well when you get to your 8th book, and trying things that you maybe wouldn't have tried before, offering my readers something different. And in the end, I was happy with it.
Oh, so you really trusted the creative process to show the answer.
I did, safe in the knowledge that if I wanted to pull that bit out and just leave the flashbacks, that would be an option too. So yeah.
Before we get to Barrie and Pippa, in one of your interviews, you talked about wanting to title the book something different. But I loved the title of the book because of the intrigue of questioning, what is a soulmate? Fast and fiery, like Pippa and Gabe, or slow build like Amanda. Did you want to go into the writing juxtaposing the two? And can you speak more about the title and the meaning to you?
Yeah, I called the book The Cliff, as I wrote it, which shows how creative I am with titles. That's not my natural skill set. And with the exception of The Mother-in-Law, I've never had a title that I have come up with be selected as the final title, because I stick to writing the books. But in a way, The Cliff was also a bit of a metaphor for relationships and marriage, and when things start to push you to the edge, the byline wrote itself. So sorry, so the question, I got distracted. The question was
that you wanted to call it The Cliff, but you ended up calling it The Soulmate.
Yes.
And what are your thoughts on the difference between
the two relationships?
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the idea of soulmates is so interesting to me, because a lot of people, and certainly in Pippa and Gabe's case, who had this really romantic meet cute, and it was chemistry and passion from the beginning. And Max and Amanda had a much more pragmatic start to their relationship. It made me think, well, what is a soulmate? Is it about a moment, which is how it's so often depicted in Hollywood or in fiction? Is it about a moment, or is it about the relationships that you create together over time? And I think that perhaps, and also, does it have to be romantic? For some people, their soulmate is their best friend, or their mum, or their dog. I know people that say their dog was their soulmate. And I think that you can reduce it to being something that's a moment that's about passion and chemistry, when in fact a soulmate can be something quieter and deeper. I know my mum, on her 60th birthday, and she's still married to my dad, and they have a very non-romantic but solid marriage, and it is how I would say it. And she talked about how she'd seen my dad out mowing the grass that day, and she looked out and she'd waved at him and he'd waved back at her. And she said, and I just thought that was really nice, and I hope that I get to wave at him for the next 20 years. And I thought, maybe that's what a soulmate is, and so to reduce it to anything specific, I think is reductive, and might be a mistake.
Well, that's really interesting. And when you were relaying the story about your mother, I thought about the interview that I watched in preparing for tonight, where you talked about kind of the spark of inspiration for this book during COVID and looking for your husband.
Yeah, he's my soulmate, but occasionally I fantasize about murdering him.
So I want to share with our audience a little bit about the inspiration for the soulmate then.
Yeah, this is marriage. So here in Melbourne, we had the longest lockdown in the world. So I kind of think, if you're going to have something bad, you might as well be the best at it, right? So that was Melbourne. And I always say to people, how you feel when your partner, your husband specifically, or has been home from work all day, and you just, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're looking at them thinking, off you go, this is too much together time. So imagine 3 or 4 months of this with your children and your dog in the house, and you can imagine how murderous my thoughts were. And there was one particular day where my kids, it was 10 to 9, my kids were about to have to log on for their horrendous, cruel homeschooling online thing. My 3-year-old was getting out her permanent markers to draw on the walls, because that was her full-time job during lockdown. And Christian, my husband, my soulmate, had disappeared. And this is something he did very effectively at this time of day during lockdown. And it was a skill, because we weren't allowed to go anywhere, right? But he might be mowing the lawn, or talking to the postman, or cleaning out a cupboard, at this very convenient time of day. And this time I found him in the garage. He'd moved the car out, he'd set up a video camera, and he was videoing himself practicing his golf swing. at 10 to 9 when the 3 kids were waiting to get online for home learning. So he could then superimpose it over a video of Tiger Woods swinging his golf club and measure the angles to see how far off he was. And so I looked at him and I thought, this book is going to be about marriage and murder, because otherwise someone's going to die in this house, and at least I get to, you know, plan it out in my head. And I walked away and I went on my WhatsApp chat with my best girlfriends and I texted and said, is anyone fantasizing about murdering their husbands? And normally this chat is quiet because they're all, you know, in their 40s, kids, jobs. Within 30 seconds, full attendance in the chat. And not only was everyone fantasizing about murdering their husbands, they're all happily married, still married, no one's died, right? Just important to say. They'd all plotted exactly how they were going to murder them and what their sin was. And some of them even had, you know, the final thing they were going to say to them before they, you know, smashed that rock into his head. You know, this is for eating that apple really loudly, you know. And I just thought, I have to write this novel. And as I said, you know, happily married, this is just how, and I just don't think anyone gets through a long marriage without fantasizing about killing their partner, you know, at least a few times. I hope that's the case, because I still really love my husband, but sometimes, you know.
That's a cute
No.
story. And I'm so glad you shared it. So let's hear from Barrie. Barrie, it's so nice to have you back. How many of you were blown away that Barrie is a New Yorker? I just think I was blown away the first time we had Barrie on for The Good Sister, and it's so much fun to have you back, Barrie. She's joining us for the second time, and we're thrilled that she's back. And we'd love to hear you read Pippa, Barrie, when you're ready.
Absolutely. So I'm going to read Pippa from the beginning of chapter 3, which I chose because it just gives a little glimpse into her state of mind at the very beginning of this book. And I love the way she maintains her sense of humor in a crisis. I lied to the police. No matter how many times I tell myself this, I still can't get my head around it. I lied to the police. Why did I do that? Admittedly, it's quite common if police procedural dramas are anything to go by. In every one I've watched, at least the first 3 suspects are lying about something. Usually it's an affair or another more insignificant crime. I'm hiding neither. And yet, here we are. I'm not the kind of person who lies to the police. I am the epitome of a good citizen. I have no unpaid fines of any sort. I ceased parking my car in the mother and baby spaces the moment the girls grew out of the pram. The time I found a cash-filled wallet, I handed it to the police immediately, even though I was a student at the time and desperately needed the money. More importantly, I am a lawyer. I understand the importance of being truthful, and I know that providing a false statement to police is against the law. I could be struck off the register for it, I realized with sudden horror. I could lose my ability to practice law. It's 9 p.m. and I'm folding laundry at the coffee table while our garden swarms with cops. The crime scene team arrived an hour ago, along with the state emergency service who set up tents and huge lights. Police search and rescue are also here apparently. As it turns out, retrieving a body at night from the bottom of a cliff during a rain and windstorm when the tide is in isn't easy business. Kat left once the girls were tucked up in bed, promising that she'd be back in the morning. And Gabe is running around after the police, switching on outdoor lights and offering warm drinks and umbrellas. Which leaves me with laundry. Normally folding laundry is the antidote to anxiety for me, but tonight I find it lacking. I've already put away the toys and vacuumed. The dishwasher is on. I'm running out of ways to self-soothe.
There you get Sally's humor in that self-soothe. I can relate to that.
I feel like there have been other characters in your books folding laundry in crisis moments too. Always, and sometimes
there's just always so much laundry.
Yeah.
So thanks, Barrie, for reading.
Of course, it's a funny, it's always an interesting experience trying to read live. And I was in the recording studio all day today doing a British book, so my brain's a little like, but thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for jumping that hurdle of switching to accent. It's such a treat to be able to have all of you in the same room together. And I know as the world is returning to in-person events, it's great to connect with people physically in the same room. But that's what's so I really appreciate about these virtual events is that we're all able to join together and hear both narrators and the author and join from different parts of the globe. So again, I want to express my gratitude for everybody making room in your schedule today to come and read and chat with us. So I have a question for all of you. I'm kind of curious. If you were to write an epilogue for your character or characters, Sally, say, you know, kind of, I know maybe Amanda might be a little challenging, but what happens when she meets up with Max? What would you put in your epilogue for each of the characters? Barrie, why don't you go first? Do you have, well, how would you like to see Pippa in the next month after this book ended?
I was more prepared to answer the question about audiobook narrating.
Oh, okay. I jumped the gun on that, but okay. Think about that question. Well, think about that question. But now tell us, what do you find is your niche within the voice acting?
And thank you for asking that. And Jessica, thank you for sharing your process too, because I do always think it's interesting to hear how other narrators approach things, because we all do it a little bit differently. My niche in the industry specifically is accent work. I specialize in British accents, and then Australian was sort of an offshoot of that when I did my third Sally Hepworth book, which I got the script and said, hey, this one's set in Melbourne. Okay. So, it's been amazing. I've done other Australian books since, and that's become a sort of niche within a niche for me. But because I do so many different accents, the book that I just finished narrating today, I think there were 10. The whole thing was British, and there were people from 9 other countries involved. I love that. The more, the better. It's so much fun for me. And if I don't already know it, I'll learn it. But because of that, my prep when I get the script, the audio, you know, I call it a script. It's the book that you all see when you read it, but it's in PDF form. I also only read it through once, but as I do, I highlight all the character dialogue in different colors, so that I know at a glance who's speaking. Because often the work that I do, there is so much kind of there's always switching between characters, but switching all kinds of things that really helps me visually to know at all times who's talking when. And then I also make a list of the words that I don't know how to pronounce. And sometimes I can send that to the producer and they create a lovely spreadsheet for me. And sometimes I get to do the research myself. It depends. But those are kind of the 2 main things that I do when I'm preparing to narrate a book. And I agree also with what Jessica said. I think one of the most fun things about narrating audiobooks is the range of characters that you get to play. I come from a theater background where I've certainly been in shows where I get to play multiple characters. I'm helping to develop a new musical right now here in New York, and I'm playing about a dozen different British people, which again, I love, but you're only ever one character at a time. And I think for me, the joy of narrating an audiobook is you get to create an entire world using just your voice. And the challenge of that is tremendous. And I find it a lot of fun.
I have a question. Am I allowed to do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For Jessica and Barrie, because I've always wondered, when you do switch to another character, like Jessica, you did it when you went into the grandmother's voice just then, and you know, have you planned what their voice is going to sound like? If you just do one read through, and then you realize the next bit of dialogue is from a child or from a, you know, do you have a planned voice for them, or do you just kind of see what feels right when that comes up?
I mean, I would always, I do a kind of version of what Barrie does. So I will check to see what other characters there are. And when I did one recently, which was a non-fiction title called The Winter Road, where it was the story of a murder of an environmental officer by a grazier, an 80-year-old grazier, a man. So I had to kind of, you know, find the voice for that. So yeah, it's always a process of trying things out and seeing what fits. So yeah, I mean, I'm keenly aware of the voices that are required within, but I try not to get too familiar with the text. It's kind of it's a weird thing. Yeah, I'm sure Barrie would speak to that too.
Yeah, I get asked a lot whether I rehearse the text beforehand, to which my answer usually is there isn't time. I mean, there's just enough time to read the whole thing once before I have to go in, and you're always prepping multiple books at once if if you're doing this full time. So my kind of version of that sense of spontaneity is I very rarely read anything out loud. And to me, certainly, again, coming from a theater background, the most powerful thing that happens is when you say the words for the first time. And all of the other performances that you give, you're trying to trick yourself into thinking that you're saying the words for the first time. So the great gift of audiobook work is you actually are. Now, every so often, to answer, Sally, your question about voices, generally speaking, especially for more minor characters, I make them up as I go. I have an idea in my mind. I've read the book in advance, so I know everything that the author has said about that person's voice. Sometimes he said in a raspy tone, or he said in a thick Russian accent. Like, that information's there, so that's a given. What it all comes from the text first, but very often I just kind of go for it and see what happens in the moment with that character. And I have situations where I'll narrate half a scene and then go, that's not this character's voice. Let me go back and make a different choice. For major characters, or for characters that are very, very different from me, or if I'm learning a new accent, I will do a little bit of rehearsal in advance so that I know I can produce that voice on a consistent basis when I start recording.
And I was just also going to add that, everyone needs to be aware that we inevitably make mistakes. And so, if a voice isn't gelling, or, I mean, sometimes I don't know whether you use this, Barrie, but sometimes for an accent, I will, there's a fantastic online facility where you can actually get your ear in tune. So if there's a bunch of characters and you're having to move between them in one chapter, say, sometimes I can lose the thread, and so the sound engineer, will kind of either play something I've done before, so I can get my ear in again. So you're often doing revisions and dropping in to be able to fix any flaws or bumps in the read.
That's really surprising, because I would think that if I were a voice actor, I'd be rehearsing. So to hear both of you kind of do it organically is really interesting. And as an audiobook listener, when there is a narrator who is like nails on a chalkboard, you start to tune into what is it about the narrator that I am enjoying. And I think great voice actors like yourselves, it becomes seamless in the story. But not only is it seamless, it adds dimension. And that when a narrator is there's something about the narrator, you don't pay attention to the story, but when you are talented like both of you, it's seamless. And when I'm going, oh, this is great narration, then the story comes up off the page, or out, that it adds dimension. So I'm really fascinated that both of you kind of do it organically without I'd be walking around the house and rehearsing. So thank you for sharing how you approach your voice acting roles. Wow, I can't believe how quick this has gone. I had 4 more questions, but I want to do a little bit of a lightning round for the 3 of you to end this amazing event. And once again, before we kind of conclude, I want to say thank you to everybody who attended, whether you are a member of the Walking Book Club or new to us. I hope you'll follow us. And I want to say thank you to our special guests, Jessica, Barrie, and Sally, for making time in your day to join us. So lightning round. for all of you. Let's go, Sally, Jessica, Barrie.
Sally, Jesse, Raphael.
Are you going to your Judge Judy thing now?
Yeah.
Okay, are you a hero or a helper?
Oh, I'm a hero, but not to make myself sound really good, because in general, I'm terrible at most things. But I think when the adrenaline kicks in a crisis, I'm actually quite good. So, useless to most people unless something really terrible's happened.
Jessica.
I would say, yeah, I'm pretty good I can be good in a crisis, but I'm a facilitator. I'm a bringing out the best in people kind of person. Helper. I think I'm a helper more than a hero.
Barrie.
I think I'm a helper too.
That's interesting. Since we are a book club that has a healthy mind, happy body ethos, and we're all about trying to live a thriving, flourishing life, what is your non-negotiable for self-care?
Me, I exercise every day, and by exercise, it's the most pathetic. Like, I either walk or I do yoga. I'm a yin exercise kind of person, low intensity for the mind rather than the body. Yeah.
I also exercise. I go to the gym and I bicycle, and I would describe myself as a secular Buddhist. I meditate every day, and I belong to a meditation group.
Sleep.
Yeah.
Really, I get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night whenever I can. People who tell me they live on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I wouldn't still be alive. So
That's a good
what
one.
project on your horizon are you most excited about?
My next book, which I've just turned in, which is called Darling Girls, and it's about more family dysfunctionality. You won't be surprised to hear. It's about 3 girls who meet when growing up in foster care together. They're not related, but they grow up as sisters, and as adults they are still living as sisters, and they're called back to the home where they grew up when a body is found buried underneath that beautiful home.
Okay.
So
This is just a quick aside. So one of the questions I had for you was, would you ever write a sequel? And you had alluded to the fact that this might have a character returning.
yes, except it's only a very tiny part, and it's a prequel rather than a sequel. So there's a little glimpse of Fern from the Good Sister, when before the Good Sister starts. Her Fern and Rose grew up in foster care together, and so there's a little glimpse of them in Darling Girls.
Jessica, next project on your horizon that you're excited about?
Well, I've just auditioned for a book that I'm really hoping that I get the gig for, but I can't really talk about it because if I don't get the gig, it'd be really embarrassing. and I'm actually writing a book, so which is it's yeah. So that's been
Well,
that's me.
A novel?
Yes, I guess I describe it as autofiction. It's kind of it's fiction. Yeah, but drawing.
I just had the same experience. I just auditioned for a book that I really want to get, but I have no idea. I can't tell you what it is because also it will be very embarrassing if I don't get it.
It's also kind of like a curse, you don't want to talk
Okay,
about
that
it.
shall not be named.
But I just finished narrating a fantastic book called Good Night, Irene by Luis Alberto Urrea. It's coming out from Hachette Audio at the end of May. Great book club book if you guys are interested. It is a novel about women in World War II. And it's just absolutely stunning. It's Little Brown's lead title for this season. And I highly recommend that.
Awesome. And finally, how can we connect with you if we want to stay in touch?
For me, Instagram is my my home of place to contact me. I'm at Sally Hepworth, and I'm on there being ridiculous most days, trying on clothes and messing around with my husband and my children, and just that's where you can follow me and see what I'm doing.
Jessica.
Same. I'm on Instagram. J Douglas Henry. You can welcome to follow me. I don't actually post that much, but yeah.
Okay, and Barrie.
I am on Instagram as well, Barrie Pics, and I have a website, barriekreinik.com, which is where all my sort of news about upcoming projects goes.
Well, I hope that you'll all be back for another Sally Hepworth book, voicing, acting somebody new for us, or maybe even Fern again. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this evening, and please follow us as well. We have our discussion group on Facebook, and we also are on Instagram at the Walking Book Club. So thank you so much. I hope to see everyone again in another event, with another book, or in another Heart and Soul book chat. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night. Lovely
Thanks
to
so much
to
for
have the
having us.
opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.